Okay. Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm good, Douglas. How are you doing today?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Nothing else to do here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We are freezing.
Oh, I bet.
Something like minus 30 out there Celsius. So I don't think I've been outside for days now.
Yeah, that's a little bit too cold. That's the kind of cold where your eyelashes stick together if you blink.
Yeah, it's you really have to sort of keep your mental health going because for me, I mean, I'll take plus 30 over minus 30 anytime. People here, we're, Canadians are sometimes, if they're given a choice, they'll take the extremely cold weather as opposed to the extremely hot. But I'll take the heat because at least you can go outside and sit in the shade and just get outside. Whereas when it's this cold, you can't even really stick your head out for very long.
No, that's true. Okay, so you're here to promote your book. Your book is called Fancy Prison, and as you mentioned before we got on, that this is your first book that you've written. Why did you decide to write a book?
It was cathartic for me to write this book because the experience that we went through dealing with the child welfare industry, it was just so stressful. And I've always found, like in the past, when I do sort of work through my emotions and a very confusing ordeal, it just helps me to write things out. And so writing things out, writing letters to politicians, of course, only to be ignored, but at least it got it out on paper. And then the culmination of this book really helped me sort through this our ordeal, this system, advocating for children. And Douglas, I don't think I mentioned this to you when we were talking, but I actually won a publishing prize last year
Oh, great.
because of the COVID lockdowns. I was stuck at home like everybody else last year, twiddling my thumbs with nothing to do. And I always wanted to write a book in my life. I don't think I really knew what exactly it was going to be about until this ordeal happened to us in 2017. But during this pandemic, I participated in an author challenge, and this author challenge went on for about 8 days. And at the end, the company, they gave away a publishing prize, and guess who won? Yours truly. So that was my catalyst, and I just needed to write the book, and I knew what I wanted to write about, but it took about a year and a bit, and then it first came out on ebook, and then now it's on paperback here. So holding my first book ever.
Oh, well, that's great.
It's yeah, I guess it's a milestone for someone who always wanted to write a book.
So, what's the story? I mean, you said this had to do with child welfare. Can you give us kind of a quick synopsis of it? Don't give away the whole story, but just kind of briefly what happened. What was the ordeal?
Well, the ordeal was I became a grandma, and I live in Edmonton, as I've already mentioned, freezing cold Edmonton. But my granddaughter, she was born in a different province, a neighboring province, British Columbia. And when she was born, well, the last month of my daughter's pregnancy, and then when she was born, social workers got involved with my daughter's life. And I was confused, and my daughter was confused and very stressed out, and she was a single mom, so her and the dad weren't living together. So my daughter already was sort of digging in to be a single mom, which is fine. She had me as a role model. I single parented her too. But then the baby was born, and everything was just turned upside down. Like nothing was what we thought it was going to be. There was just social workers at the hospital. There was a birth alert, which I explain a little bit more in my book, where they go and take the baby like right at birth, or try to anyway. And it was just ridiculous, and it was just so stressful. So in my book, I do introduce our friend who became our biggest advocate, our friend Suzanne, and she helped us. Like, I still to this day, I don't know what I would have done without Suzanne. And she had her own backstory about how she dealt with MCFD. So CPS has different names in different states or different provinces here in Canada. MCFD in BC, that's the acronym, Ministry of Child and Family Development. And I saw no evidence of them actually working and developing, skills, parental skills with families. All I saw was them focusing on bad things, embellishing mistakes, and they took my grandbaby from me out of my arms when she was 2 weeks old and put her into foster care. We got her back, but I'm not the same person I was. And so my book starts off with me driving through a winter blizzard to get to BC to hold my grandbaby, but also to advocate for my daughter and just get to the bottom of this incredibly confusing situation that was going on.
Was there some sort of a red flag that came up with your daughter? Did she have trouble in the past with legal trouble
No,
or anything?
no, I'd never been involved in child protection. I never had anyone call on me and then say I was a bad parent, never had my child in the system. I don't have a criminal record, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing. Like, there was just nothing at
Was
all.
was there something with
And
the father of the child?
yeah, oh yeah, no, he had a lot of issues, but like I said, they weren't together. They weren't living together. And I'm sure that my daughter is not the first mom, a single mom, and I'm sure she won't be the last single mom. But I mean, she wanted her baby to know who the father was, but she just didn't want his lifestyle at all. And she was just trying the best that she could. She made mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes when we raise our children, but we get through it. We cope. We do the best that we can, and I think that's how children learn coping skills. In our situation, when they took our baby, when she was 2 weeks old, I mean, how is that in the best interest of the child? And you haven't even given my daughter a chance. I mean, how can you determine at 2 weeks old that she's going to be a bad mother? And the proof is in the pudding, because we got the baby back and she's 4 years old now and she's doing wonderfully. My daughter is a good mom. She's a wonderful mom. I mean, we get to be grandparents. We see my grandchild every weekend. We get to spend time with her. It's just, we're just so happy. It's wonderful, but it's really scary to think back in 2017, we were so terrorized as to what was going to happen.
What sort of an excuse did the authorities give you as to why they were taking away your granddaughter?
The reasons would always change. And I outline this a little bit more in my book. I think they in our case, I think they used about, I don't know, 3 or 4 different reasons. But initially, we think the call was that somebody called to say that my daughter was a meth head. And we had evidence that proved otherwise, but they just chose not to look at it. Like, they had coerced a signature for my daughter to get into her medical records to get her pH test, or we're guessing anyway, her pH test from her pregnancy test, and they came back clean. After the baby was born, they tested the umbilical cord. That came back clean. And then when I got there, the social workers were trying to plant seeds of doubt in me about the placenta, that they're sending it off to be tested. And we still never got those tests back, but they were choosing to ignore me and what my daughter was saying. And she was telling them, I'm not a meth head. I've never touched the stuff, and I never will. Like, so why are we still in court? I mean, it was just, it was very confusing. And they weren't really very clear about what the reasons were, because on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, they would slip in yet, oh, okay, well, now we're going to look at this reason here, or now we want to see more stability, or now, now we're putting something else on the court document. So it was incredibly frustrating. I mean,
Wow.
for me to say it, to you, to say it in my book, I mean, it's really difficult to explain how stressful and how frustrating this situation was.
So you said your granddaughter now is 4 years old?
Yeah, she'll be 5 next month, and she's a wonderful kid. She's a normal kid, She's has her ups and downs, but she's just wonderful, and she's worth the fight.
How involved is the father in her
He
life?
died. He died.
He died.
He
Okay.
died. Yeah.
Did,
That was hence the problems. This is difficult to say, and in my book, I don't really say this, but when he died, at that point, at that juncture in our story, it probably was in God's hand, and it actually kind of helped our case when he did die, because the social workers took a step back and they were probably questioning themselves. I'm speculating here, but probably questioning, oh, did we cause that? Did we cause this young man to reach for drugs that were fentanyl laced and he died? So, again, it's not a very nice thing to say, but it is what it is. I mean, that's what happened, and I'm only speculating on what maybe the social workers did at that time, which was take a step back, which was good for us because we needed some breathing space. I mean, they were just in our face all the time, like, looking for mistakes and changing the reasons for taking the baby, keeping the baby, just, prolonging this whole ordeal and keeping us going, having to go back to court. And
so he died right in the middle of all of this process, yeah?
he did at the very beginning. Yeah.
At the
Not
very
really at the
beginning.
middle. He died at the very beginning.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a really interesting story. It's heartfelt and heart-wrenching, actually. But things seem to have had a happy ending, and your granddaughter's doing well, it
She
sounds
is.
like, yeah?
She is. Yeah, she
Okay.
is. She's wonderful. Yeah. Becoming a grandma was not at all what I thought it was going to be, though.
Why do you say that?
Oh, because I guess I thought being a grandma would be like, oh, I get to hold my baby and get to show pictures of her in my wallet to anyone who will listen, and bore everyone to death. I had no idea that going through what we went through in fancy prison, that was me becoming a grandma, how much I had to advocate for my daughter and really work, and what we went through to keep my family together.
I'm glad this story had a happy ending because it could have gone another way and been very tragic, yeah?
Yes, it could have been. Yes, it could have been for sure. So the person I was back in 2017, I mean, and even now I get it too, that people will just automatically assume, oh, well, they must have their reasons. And, if I was that person, I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm not that person now. So read my book, and you have to keep an open mind, because no, they don't always have their reasons. Really read my book, and as you're going through this journey with me, keep an open mind, and always, like, try to imagine if this was you, if this was your kid, and then at the very end ask the question, does any of this make sense? Do you think that this is in the best interest of the child?
Well, I think on that note, we're going to wrap up the interview. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Not really. It's just
Okay.
on my book's on Amazon. So I think the best way to find the book, find me, link back to this show is just Google Fancy Prison by Tina Fumo, but be specific and put my name in there. So Fancy Prison by Tina Fumo, F-U-M-O. Because if you just Google fancy prison, you're going to end up getting guys and
Yeah.
guys doing white collar crimes in country club prisons, and that's not what my book is about. It's fancy prison calling BS on the child welfare industry.
Well, Tina, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. I know it was a difficult story, but best of luck with the book, and best of luck with your granddaughter.